today at some point we'll probably be seeing really bad weather. If that affects the stream and the stream shits out, my power or internet shits out, it shits out. We'll see. I've got a snow shovel. I've got food. If everything goes to shit and I need to stay in here for 3 months, I have cans of cat food that I can live off of, so I should be okay. It gets really, really, really cold in here, so if my heat shuts off for a bit, I'm gonna be in bed covered in blankets, dying. Even with my heat on, it gets really cold. It's not that well insulated. There's some stuff I need to change, but yeah. I'll be honest, I hate the idea of maybe losing power, etc., being snowed in, but I love snow. And I've been genuinely increasingly sad every year because years ago, back in the 90s and early 2000s and all that, you know, many years ago and prior, we used to always get a lot of snow. And I would have some mornings, a couple per year, 1 or 2 minimum. I'd wake up and I couldn't open my front door because it was that snowed in. And I'd be shoveling snow and it would be like 2-3 feet. There would always be at least one blizzard, at least one that just dumped a ton of snow, and then that snow would just be piled up for like forever as it slowly melted away. And I loved that. And I feel like there are a lot of years now where we get a dusting, an inch or two. 2 inches feels like a bunch at this point, you know? It's so different, the actual volume of snow. And it still gets just as cold. There's still some days where, you know, you're down in the single digits Fahrenheit, right? 8 degrees, things like that. But it hasn't been in the negatives in a long time. And more so, it's just the amount of snow that we get. I really miss that. So I'm, you know, we'll see. I want at least 6 inches of snow. Please, please. In New York, had a blackout several years ago because of a blizzard. There was a citywide blackout a long time ago. And it was so surreal because it's incredibly rare that you get to go out and walk around the city and none of the lights are on. That is crazy rare. And a lot of us went and just walked around. We just went to all sorts of neighborhoods that we could and went everywhere we could and just looked around. We're like, holy shit. I can't tell you how weird that is to be on like one of the avenues and there's no power. Like there's nothing. Because usually, you know, the way the grids are separated, it's just one block or a couple of buildings are on the same thing. So if power goes out to a building, it's just a few of them, or just that block. It's really a tiny portion. But having that happen, you know, throughout the city and looking around and it being eerily quiet is crazy. Was there looting or everyone was chilling? No, everyone was chilling. I'm gonna be honest, New York City isn't like that. And I know there are issues when there are issues, yes. But the crime per person of that type is not very high. And it's that those sorts of things are very concentrated to certain areas that are quote unquote bad areas. But most areas, it's really not that bad. And it's people that don't live there coming in with bad intent to rob tourists sometimes in the middle of the most packed areas at most. You're more likely to get scammed by one of those people than to actually, you know, you're not going to be harmed. Unless you go to a really bad neighborhood, you're not going to be harmed. And you're going to look around, you're going to be able to tell if you should be walking there or not, pretty much. And when you hear these sensationalized stories, simply by the count of people, the population that's there, stuff like that is always going to happen in the city. But the number of crimes per person, the percentages and everything going on, the proportions going on, is quite low, to be honest. And again, by neighborhood, most neighborhoods are very safe. So it just ain't like that, to be honest. More so pickpocketers. Yeah, and I'm gonna be honest, in all of my years, I have not once had someone try to rob me. And I've lived in bad areas. I've spent a lot of time in quote unquote bad areas. And I'm not saying that I'm a shining example that everyone's gonna have the same experience as me, but I've just never had to deal with it. And I'm gonna be honest, I've walked through really bad areas at night that I probably shouldn't have walked through. Never had an issue. The people aren't bold about it usually. And if you walk around looking like you know what you're doing, you know where you're going, you don't have headphones on looking down like you don't see anything around you, you know, you're looking straight ahead where you're going, your hands are in your pockets, etc., you know, you look less like a target and they don't really do it. You grew up in Rochester. The city held the highest murder rate per capita in the US for a number of years. Yeah. Yeah, people be like, oh, New York City. And I'm like, hey, go to depressed upstate New York, okay? It's really bad in some of those cities, like really bad. I don't know, man. Rochester's bad. Syracuse has its own set of issues as well. Oh, Buffalo. Buffalo is so repressed. Like horribly repressed area, doing really poorly. Lots of issues, and people be like, be careful going to Brooklyn. Okay, buddy. Okay, I would rather walk around alone in any neighborhood in Brooklyn, and maybe I'm a little biased, but any neighborhood there than Buffalo, New York. I'm just not even joking. NYC is huge. News makes it feel really small, like there's crime everywhere, but they're actually really far apart. Yeah, I mean, if I were in the Bronx, okay, northmost part of New York City. So there's the island of Manhattan, and then above that, north of that, you've got the Bronx. If I was up there and I tried to drive down through Manhattan and east out to the geographical island, out to Queens, and get to the edge of Queens where Queens ends. And if I was doing that and there were no traffic, that would still take me minimum 45 minutes. If I was driving the speed limit, at least. It would take me a long time just to get through all of that. It's really big. It's a big area. So, I don't know. People are they don't understand. Concentrated is the most appropriate word. Yeah, concentrated and huge. New York City is really 5 separate cities mashed together, all right next to each other. It's a megalopolis, as they say. It's a huge city that is basically, if you take other major cities in the US, you take several of them and just smash them together, it would still only make up a portion of New York City. There's so many people. It's geographically big. That density that you see in Manhattan, all of Manhattan is dense, and it's a big place. And then there's all this sprawl that is still city-like. It's crazy, man. And I never realized how different it was, you know, back on my day, until I started traveling to other cities. And I was looking around, and every city I would go to, I would legitimately be like, there's no way people think this is a city. because my idea of what a city was New York. That was all I knew. And it's still to this day, people be like, oh, you know, the city is just so packed, blah, blah, blah. And I go to any other city in the US and I'm like, no, this feels like a suburb. But that's just, you know, it's perspective. It's what you're used to.